Oh, hi everyone. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. Computer is slow. It's time for a new one. I know I say that every time. Isn't it warm today? This is crazy. I agree. It's far too hot. Shouldn't be this hot. This is silly. But after class, I have to install my new air conditioner. So that'll be nice. But I don't know. It's so hot. I'm a little worried. What if it doesn't condition enough air? Oh, wow. Yeah, so that's what I'm worried about. Well, oh, good. Yeah. I mean, I haven't even checked the temperature. I just know that it feels unseasonably warm for the 1st of June. Oh, that's a good plan. Yeah, heat warning. Yeah, feels like 33 according to my information on the Weather Network app. Wow. Well, maybe anomalistic psychology will take our minds off the heat. This is actually a pretty fun one. I like this topic because it allows us to get a little bit meta. And what I mean by that is, in thinking and talking about this paper, we also have an opportunity to think and discuss our own experiences with this class. And perhaps even previous experiences too. But I think you'll see what I mean. If you've already read the paper, you probably have some idea of what I mean by that. But if not, I'm sure it will become clear soon. All right. So, oh. All right. Anytime now. Yeah, my haunted computer. That's what I'm going to do later today. I'm going to look at, yeah, I'm going to look at better computers today on the internet. I think it's time. There we go. Okay, now play the slides from the beginning. There we go. All right. So hopefully PowerPoint hangs in there in spite of the awful heat. Um, this one won't mind, I think, because it's just so it's on its last legs. It's in its deathbed, like, go find another. Okay, here we go. Finally. All right. Well, you got to use a browser other than Internet Explorer or whatever it's called now. But yeah, it's true. And this computer is actually alone. It'll go back to its owner. They can deal with it. Okay, today's lecture is about anomalistic psychology, finally. The branch of psychology which studies anomalistic experiences, but unlike parapsychology, which tries to account for them in perhaps non-naturalistic ways, anomalistic psychology tries to keep it naturalistic. So we'll see what that means. So that article is Teaching Anomalistic Psychology by Jones and Zusne. Um, I think that it's particularly pertinent to this class, and well, I already said that, but you'll see why as we get through the material. So they begin their paper by pointing out that what they call anomalistic beliefs. These are things like not just belief in the paranormal, but also simple things like superstitions and stuff like that have been viewed as problems in education. It's a problem that students believe things that aren't true, that Jones and Zisney say. But there's this tendency to not engage, or at least there was in the late 70s and early 80s, a tendency just not to engage with this kind of thing. Ugh. And an important thing to keep in mind here is that in the 70s and into the 80s, parapsychology was still very much, it was still alive and kicking. In not only in popular spheres, but within the university setting as well. You could just as easily find a documentary on television about some paranormal topic as you could find a parapsychology program or class at a university. It's kind of a weird time. But Jones and Zisney think that we ought to teach people about anomalistic psychology in university for three reasons. One, and I think that this is one that a lot of you will relate to. Students are genuinely curious about paranormal phenomena, and they really what they really want is an explanation. Sure, maybe they think that explanation is going to be also also paranormal in nature, but they nonetheless want an explanation. It's genuine curiosity. That's the point. Jones and Zisney write, for the most part, we find questions about from students about allegedly paranormal experiences to be genuine and sincere attempts at understanding. Thus, for the sake of psychology's credibility and relevance and the effectiveness of our courses, we cannot simply dismiss such questions as irrelevant or beyond the scope of psychology. If we fail as instructors to provide reasonable and reasoned answers to such questions, the students will simply turn to the extensive and easily accessible occult literature for their answers. I'm not really sure how to read that last sentence here, I have to admit, because while this was also the heyday of, or sort of the end of the heyday of parapsychology, this was also just before the Satanic Panic. So by occult, I don't know if they're actually worried about, oh, these kids are going to go become Satanists or something, right? Like, I don't know if that's the worry, or if by occult they simply mean, the paranormal literature, what I would call the New Age literature. You walk into the book and you go to the New Age section, walk into a bookstore and go to the New Age section, which unfortunately is often right next to the philosophy section or part of it. And that's where you find your books on tarot cards and astrology and those types of things, right? So I don't know what they mean by that, but that's kind of beside the point. I think that a lot of you will probably relate to this point. Am I right? I think that a lot of you are here because you are genuinely curious and you want an explanation, right? Yeah. I mean, I used to be this way back when I was young. Yeah. I knew it. Yeah. That's a good way to put it, Alicia. Yeah, like when I was young, I was genuinely curious about things like psychic phenomena, and I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole reading on the internet. It was because I had first discovered the internet, right? My family actually got a computer quite late, compared to most 90s, early 2000s people, right? and I never bothered learning about the internet when I first had the opportunity. We had our first oh wow. Oh, Sadia, that's really cool. Well, they can watch my YouTube channel is one thing they can do if they want. Sorry for the shameless plug there. Um so yeah, when I was young, I remember when our classroom got the internet. I was going to East Garifraxa Central Public School, way down and in Marsville, and um, and it was in the grade 4 classroom, and we got a computer, and I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool." But I was kind of like, "Oh, that looks hard. I'm not going to do that." I wasn't a very computer savvy kid, surprisingly. I was more like, let's go to the library and read a book, right? I used to read books at recess. Can you believe that? I can. Um, so didn't really learn to use the internet until I got to high school, much later, or I would say just before high school. And you know what happens? You start going down those rabbit holes. So I was genuinely curious and genuinely exploring. Yeah, that's good too. Yeah, recess for me just because I didn't people still don't really. But anyway, so you know, once I got into, now there's all this information about all this stuff, and I started looking into it. But luckily, this was a time when um I don't know, it's not like today where it's easy to fall into an echo chamber. It was really easy to just simply like read like, oh, here's what this psychic guy says about ESP. Oh, but here's what this skeptic guy says about ESP. And I was able to like, you know, deliberate and think about it. And eventually I became a skeptic, the sort of skeptic that I am today. Yeah, that, what a weird thing, eh? I had a math teacher take away my Rubik's Cube once. I was like, come on, man. It's still the same thing, isn't it? So, whoa, what happened there? Now that's a weird thing for a teacher to get mad about. I guess maybe a gym teacher would be, you know, no reading until you finished your basketball game. I don't know. That's strange. That just strikes me as strange. I think teachers ought to let students do whatever they need to do as long as they're learning, you know? And for some students that's reading in class or reading extra time, you know, or drawing, or it's whatever, right? But yeah, I definitely empathize. I definitely relate to this. And yeah, when I started getting my you know, when I started down that skeptical journey, it's not like I was like, oh, it sucks that ESP isn't a thing. It's more like, oh, it's kind of neat to understand something about the world now. So I'm still cool, right? I'm still cool with it. Um, another reason that we ought to teach about these things is because there are actual parapsychology courses out there. I don't know if there are now. I'm gonna look. I wonder. But at the time, there were certainly a number of different universities offering parapsychology courses. I'm going to Google it. Program. Parapsychology degree programs. Really? Oh, wow. That's interesting. The University of Edinburgh. They're a really good school, too. That's weird. Okay, now I'm curious. Is this the real University of Edinburgh? Yeah. Oh, okay. It's a parapsychology unit. Hmm. That's interesting. Oh wow, Taylor, that's amazing. Yeah, Carol, it looks like they do. They are there. It's a couple of psychologists. Um, it looks like it's a skeptical approach. It looks like it's kind of like this class. Um, that's really interesting. Yeah, they have a Peter Lamont and Caroline Watt. And they do one of them does, the first one does sort of like history and psychology of magic and the paranormal, and another does replication and methodological issues in parapsychology, along with other topics. So that's actually really interesting. That's not a yeah, that's not like parapsychology is real. That's actually a lot more like what we're doing here. Yeah, Taylor, that is pretty neat that you're going there. That is a really cool opportunity. Definitely. You should learn as much as you can while you're there. Absolutely. Um so there are, maybe not at Edinburgh, but there were courses on parapsychology, and you could argue that even if there are no longer such courses, there is still misinformation out there concerning psi phenomena, the paranormal, and whatnot. And that should be counterbalanced with courses about anomalistics, or maybe courses like this one, which are not strictly about parapsychology or anomalistic psychology, but which deal with these kinds of claims in general. Jones and Zisney write, the information we have been able to assemble indicates that although there are courses that are taught by departments of philosophy, physics, and others on clear thinking, fads and fallacies in science, science and pseudoscience, and the like, only some 12 or 13 courses in as many institutions of higher learning are taught by psychologists on topics that could be described as anomalistic psychology. And the same is true of Carleton. For example, if you go, if you take, well, if you're in the philosophy program, which some of you might be, there is also a critical thinking course that you can take. But that course is general, right? It's generalized. It's about critical thinking generally. So you'll learn to apply critical thinking in not just claims of, not just like claims about the paranormal, but pseudoscience in general, how to evaluate, the things politicians tell you, the things advertisers tell you, right? That's what you'll get. You won't get something that's specifically focused on the paranormal or the anomalistic. Oh, cool. Yeah, Christina. So yeah, so what kind was it like that? Was it a general sort of thing? When I took a critical thinking course, which wasn't at Carleton, mind you, but when I took it, it was just a broad, like, here's how to critically evaluate claims. But I don't know, what does it look like when you took it? Yeah, so like, here are some examples of this kind of fallacy. And they were probably, I mean, if I had to guess, okay, argument structures, yeah. You're going to learn both, really. With me, it was a little formal logic, a little informal logic. Yeah. But I don't think we ever once evaluated a paranormal or anomalistic claim when I was taking that course. And finally, the final reason why we should teach courses like anomalistic psychology are that psychology, Jones and Zisney argue, should become a genuine and complete science of behavior and experience. And we can't do that if we don't teach about or research on anomalistic psychology. If we don't do that, psychology remains an incomplete discipline. As they say on page 78, to the student, telepathy, faith healing, or psychokinesis are eminently psychological topics. To ignore the psychology of anomalies is to have an incomplete psychology. So, psychology just won't be done or complete until we have some understanding of people's anomalous experiences, such as encounters with ghosts, abductions by aliens, beliefs that they have psychic powers, and so forth. So those are the three reasons why we ought to study anomalistic psychology, and I agree with all of them. I think they're very good points. But just what is anomalistic psychology anyway? Well, there are certain abnormal states of mind, right? Throughout history, people have experienced these. Jones and Zisney include things like precognitive dreams, cases of miraculous healing, sleepwalking, and automatic behaviors, as well as cases of severe psychopathology. So cases where things seem to be supernatural or paranormal, and cases where people are obviously perhaps ill, right? We used to attribute divine or supernatural causes to these things, demons or spirits, right? I'm talking here cases like automatic behaviors or psychopathology. Now we understand that if you're mentally ill, it's not because you have demons in your head, right? There are other experiences, right? Like the miracle, faith healing, precognition, like those things, that seem to violate what we can call limiting principles of naturalism. Principles that tell us how the natural world works. So think of a precognitive dream. It violates the limiting principle of cause and effect. So one of the limiting principles of naturalism is that the world is causally closed, right? If something is caused by something, it must be a physical cause. And in order to cause anything, it's got to be physical cause again. But how would that work with precognitive dreams? Because you're viewing things before they've been caused to happen, right? So that's one way that that would violate a limiting principle of naturalism. That's particularly what anomalistic psychologists are interested in. And it was actually an anthropologist named Robert Westcott who first coined this term. He thought it was more neutral than parapsychology. And parapsychology, as we've learned, often assumes a paranormal or supernatural explanation for the matter that it's studying. But anomalistic psychology is really concerned with claims that certain phenomena are inexplicable in terms of orthodox science or natural science. So where the parapsychologists are making claims that certain phenomena violate the limiting principles of naturalism, anomalistic psychology is not just going to go, oh, okay, maybe it's the power of consciousness, right? They're not going to do that. They're going to apply the scientific method and remain under the assumption that many of these can, in fact, be explained as natural phenomena, including sometimes as non-phenomena. So where there's nothing actually going on. It's kind of like basically the approach we've been taking this entire time, right? Taking a paranormal claim seriously, but evaluating it skeptically. So you might be asking, well, what if anomalistic psychology actually does identify something real, but which seems to violate the limiting principles of naturalism? Will that ever happen? I mean, maybe, but what's more likely to happen is what Jones and Zisney say on page 79. They say, when the scientific requirements of falsifiability, replicability, parsimony, and intersubjective verifiability have been complied with, the seeming need to revise the basic limiting principles can be seen to have lost its urgency. So real quick, falsifiability, we're talking about the idea that scientific hypotheses need to be potentially falsifiable, because what scientists actually do is they don't try and prove things correct. They try and disprove hypotheses. And if they fail to do that, well, then maybe we've learned something. Replicability, other scientists have to be able to do that too. They have to be able to replicate my experimental results. Parsimony, Occam's razor, right? We want the fewest unwarranted assumptions in our theories and hypotheses as possible. And intersubjective verifiability is interesting that they mention this, because this actually goes back to like scientific behaviorism, logical positivism, that kind of thing. Yeah, basically. That's how science works too. We can't replicate this. Well, maybe it's a non-phenomenon. Maybe you got the result you did the first time around just due to chance. But intersubjective verifiability is the idea that it's a positivist idea. It's the idea that the only things we should say are things that we can verify to be true. It's about the language we use, really, ultimately. So when we actually comply with these principles, we don't need to revise the limiting principles. We don't need to be like, for example, oh, the power of consciousness can explain my nearly insignificant experimental result, for example. Well, no. Maybe your result was just due to chance, and that's it, right? That's what we would probably find if we stuck with these limiting principles, right? Now, all the authors argue that all psychology touches upon anomalistic psychology. I'm not going to run through the examples today, but you can turn to page 79 if you want to see just how all areas of psychology touch in some way upon anomalistic psychology. A lot of psychologists think that because ESP, PK, and other psi phenomena are not real, we shouldn't study them, and we shouldn't teach about them in class. But Jones and Zisney think that this is wrong-headed. Even if these things aren't real, people's experiences are real, right? Even if I was not actually abducted by aliens last night, perhaps I still had the experience of being taken up into a spaceship, and I want that explained, right? So people's experiences are real. So psychologists have this responsibility, they say, to understand anomalistic psychology and to try and offer people naturalistic explanations of anomalous events and occurrences that may have happened in their life. Besides, if we just pass over the paranormal, if we just don't talk about it, people are going to believe in it anyway. They're not going to. People very seldom. Well, I don't know. I don't know the numbers actually, but it seems to me that when people get into this sort of thing, they very seldom consider the skeptical literature. So it'd be better to do it in a university class where things are balanced and reasonable and so on and so forth. Yeah, you also, I mean, if people believe in this stuff, it's like I said at the start of the class, like if people believe in something paranormal or anomalistic, I mean, it's not like Like, we shouldn't be all like, ah, you're dumb or something. Like, no, not at all. Um, I mean, people believe all kinds of things. But I want to know what's true. So I consider the skeptical side. Um, and as a teacher, as an instructor, I kind of have to take everybody along with me while I do that, right? Besides, the purpose of this class is not really to turn you all into skeptics, into hard skeptics who deny anything, who deny everything and anything and everything, right? The purpose is just to get you to think. If you come away from this and you still decide to believe in the paranormal, then that's okay. But I hope you'll at least have better reasons for why you do. You know, and keep in mind, I'm somebody who does not believe in the paranormal. So, you know, this is me saying this. I don't want to just be all like, you all have wrong beliefs or something, right? Doesn't mean to say also that you can't do paranormal stuff. I mean, I think it's fine if people like to do tarot cards and seances and stuff, or give each other psychic readings. I think all of that is very innocuous. I only think the problem comes when somebody tries to take advantage of you, tries to ask for money and stuff like that. That's where I think this really becomes problematic. So, yeah. Anyway, how do we teach it? I think, and I'm following Jones and Zusne here. It's got to be, the materials has to be presented in a way where you aren't simply debunking, right? Don't, I mean, well, debunking technically just means to show why a claim like this is false. So, sorry. So, ordinary debunking is just, okay, here's why psychics probably aren't real, and you explain. But nowadays, debunking has kind of become a bit loaded. There's a lot of extra baggage with that term, right? Debunking, all you have to do is go on YouTube, like look at Skeptic YouTube, and it's kind of like they're all party poopers. Like, not all of them, but a lot of them. So you can't just debunk in the sort of baggaged way where you're not technically just debunking, you're potentially antagonizing or ruling out, making sweeping claims without considering the particulars of the claim. You can't just do that. Yeah, exactly. And hey, I was there. I've been there, right? In my cringe era before I went to university. So you can't just debunk. Instead, you need to show how, in the case of anomalistic psychology, or more broadly with philosophy, with cognitive science, whatever, show how we use reasonable or reasoned or scientific approaches to explain these anomalous features of the psyche, or these anomalous events that may have happened to you, right? Basically, I think you have to kind of take a page from Carl Sagan and science, science promoters, science popularizers in that tradition, right? You kind of have to take a page from Sagan's book and show, not that he's the only one, there are certainly others, But you have to show, you can't just show why a belief is wrong. You do have to explain why it's wrong, but you have to also give some indication of why what is true is actually way cooler, right? Because usually it is, I think. I think the real explanation is 9 times out of 10 way cooler than anything supernatural. And then again, that could be my own bias because I am a pretty thoroughgoing naturalist. So, yeah. So all of this raises an interesting question. Should teachers, say you're like me and you're teaching a course like this one, Philosophy of the Paranormal or Anomalistic Psychology, raises an ethical question that Jones and Zisney consider in this paper. And that question is, should teachers try and change the students' beliefs? Now, before we talk specifically about paranormal claims, what do we think? I mean, should teachers in general aim at belief change in their students? What do we think? Okay. So give opinions, but not force. Depends on the method, a little nudge. Not force anything. Okay, yeah. Only give the facts. Yeah, so okay, access to knowledge is the primary objective, inform the students. Okay, interesting. So, yeah. Yeah, yeah, good point. Arguing with facts. I mean, there's a sense in which I agree with some of you here. I mean, should I try and change students' religious beliefs? I don't think I should, right? I think that's kind of, crossing a line. I think that is stepping, that's stepping on people's toes at that point. Even though I'm an atheist, but I can't teach my class where going like, hey, here's why your religion is wrong. Then I'd be back to my cringe YouTube days. So yeah, I can't do that. Yeah, exactly, Conrad. If a student believed something like that, I would have to change their belief. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't, right? When it comes to things like, when it comes to deeply personal things like religious and cultural things, I think that I take a step back at that point, right? And that's why this can be tricky, right? Because sometimes students have a sincere belief in something that we might call paranormal, but it's not paranormal to them. It's perhaps part of a religious or a folkloric or cultural background. This is something you've got to be careful of. Like, say you wanted to talk about well, it's something that it's something that we run into when we talk about cryptids like the Wendigo or Sasquatch, right? Because there's one group that thinks of those as cryptids, namely the cryptozoologists who want to go and find these creatures. But then there are other groups, namely the indigenous people, the traditions of whom these creatures come from, that regard them in a very different way. So if I say Bigfoot isn't real, well, that might mean, this is a toy example. That might mean one thing to somebody and another thing to somebody else, right? Yes. Oh, that's really good. Yeah. Like, so you got to be like Socrates. You've got to lead people to the answer, get them to birth their own ideas, right? Which is easier said than done. So like a lot of you were saying, education in the sense of presenting with facts is the goal of the teacher. But that cannot be right. At least it cannot be complete. Obviously, I'm presenting you with facts. But the whole purpose of a liberal arts education is to get you to think critically, to promote reason, to question dogma. That literally is the entire point of university. And this stuff necessarily involves belief change. I think it's just a question of how it comes to happen. Like if I said like, okay, anybody who still believes in ghosts at the end of this class fails, that would be wrong, right? But if I present you with like, okay, so ghosts, yeah, okay, but what about this? And, you know, I say I present you with our lecture on mediumship and ghost hunting, and then you think about it and decide for yourself and your beliefs change that way. That's probably okay, right? So in a sense, what Jones and Zisney are saying in a very important sense is that an anomalistic psychology course really isn't that different from any other course in a liberal arts education. It's to get you to think critically, to increase your knowledge base, to expand your mind. Yeah. So maybe the question of belief change is not whether or not we change the beliefs, but how do we change people's beliefs? You have to show respect, right? And this is why I try and keep this class like a safe space for that. You can't just again, debunking used to just mean showing why something is false. Now it's become loaded, I think, with a lot of like, oh, look at these dummies who believe in ghosts. They're dumb. Let's debunk those dummies. There's too much of that, right? And besides, like I said, sometimes there's a lot of overlap between paranormal or anomalistic beliefs and folklore, religious, cultural traditions. So you got to be careful. Like you've really got to be careful. So they say an ethical approach to anomalistics would be one which emphasizes the positive traditional ideals of science, namely empirical proof, sound logic, open-mindedness, and suspension of judgment in the absence of proof. And yeah, sounds good to me. I mean, we have to remember that even the Society for Psychical Research, way back in the 19th century, started off as an honest, earnest attempt to understand whether there might be some new direction of evolution that the human race was taking off in, right? So you can't merely debunk, you can't antagonize. Exercise a little epistemic humility. Like when you don't know, just say you don't know. Or when you believe versus know, make that clear. Definitely try and avoid dogma. Remember, we're skeptical because we want to know what's true. If you disbelieve anything and everything, you're doing it wrong. That's how you end up going down conspiracy rabbit holes, right? So, or that's one of the ways anyway. Whoops. So next I want to look at a brief little study, and I doubt we're going to go very long. In fact, we're on slide 14 already. And it's so hot. I don't know. I don't think we're going to go the full 3 hours today, everyone. I think what we're going to do is take a quick 5-minute break. and then we'll come back and finish off the rest of these slides where we talk about a little experiment that Jones and Zisney do on belief change with their students. Yeah, it's like, oh, it's so stuffy. I think my ceiling fan might be blowing in the wrong direction, actually. So I'm going to try and fix that. Yeah, let's come back at 12:27-ish. That's the time, or 12, or let's just say 12:30. Yeah, it's sucking all the air up. I don't like it. Yeah, if you snuck some ice cream in, now's the time. Now's the time. So let's come back shortly, and then we'll talk about this interesting experiment and the analysis of the results. It's very interesting. It's all about belief change. All right, so I'll see you guys shortly, okay? Oh, how do I? Oh, that's not what I meant to. Oh, right. Mute myself. Right. Let's get started again. So just a little public service announcement. Definitely dust all your fans. I just dusted my ceiling fan and wow, what a difference. I don't know the physics behind it. I'm sure there's some engineer who knows like why fans are less efficient when they're dusty, but if they get real dusty, they don't blow as much air. So do that at home. You'll thank me. I'm surprised. I live next to an elementary school and they've got the kids outside right now. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah, I don't know the reason. Maybe it makes it heavier. Yeah, it causes drag or the shape of the blade changes such that it can't push more air. I'm sure there's some guy who works for like Dyson or something who's figured this out, right? There's probably, there's probably a YouTube video about it. Maybe we can find it later. But whatever the reason, it's moving air now and it feels better. But yeah, what's curious is they have the kids outside for recess next door. But it's too hot for that. But then again, I think they're making them play in the shade. They're like every time they come out from under the tree, they get yelled at. So I don't know. But it's hot. It's too hot. Yeah, let's share the screen. Okay, here we go. So Anomalistics tries to deal with phenomena, psychological phenomena where the limiting principles of naturalism appear to be violated. So where parapsychology takes this violation as a sort of motivation to look for non-naturalistic explanations, what Anomalistics does is try to explain why does it seem to the person to whom this happened that these principles of naturalism were violated. And the person who it happens to doesn't have to know about these limiting principles, right? They don't have to have explicit like knowledge of the principle of parsimony or something, right? They don't. They just have to know like, oh, this should not be possible, but it seemed to happen to me. Therefore, it is in fact possible because it happened, right? Parapsychologists take a similar approach as the people to whom these things happen. It strikes me that I don't think I've had a paranormal experience, not a real good one. It would be cool to see a UFO or spend a night in a haunted house. I think I would do that. But yeah, I haven't really haven't really had a weird anomalous experience like that. Well, there's also overlap between the paranormal, between anomalistic experiences and the supernatural, the paranormal, the occult. Mind you, not all anomalistic experiences do, but many do. Yeah. Well, I always imagine some scenario where it's like, oh, your great uncle so-and-so died and left you all his money. But you have to spend one night in his house and it's this haunted Victorian mansion or something, right? There are these tropes like this on television and stuff that you see. So I could do a scenario like that where you spend one night in the haunted house and survive the night. That might be fun. So, okay, chat. Yeah. Yeah, is there yeah. Somebody would charge for this service, wouldn't they? Yeah. Yeah, I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. Once I'm out, I'm out. So, okay, so the people who have anomalistic experiences and believe that they are veridical probably have some overlapping beliefs in the supernatural or the paranormal. Oh, excuse me. So how effective would a class like this be in terms of these standard educational objectives? Giving people knowledge in the hopes that they modify their beliefs to accord with what is true. Well, Jones and Zisney actually did a little study on this using their anomalistic psychology students. They collected data from a class on anomalistic psychology that they were teaching at the University of Tulsa, which I believe is in Oklahoma. And they used the BPS, or the Belief in Paranormal scale, to measure the students' beliefs. Now, this scale, it's like many scales you see in psychology. It is full of statements, and then you have to rate the extent to which you agree or disagree with the statement. So Likert scales, they're called Likert scales, and usually 1 to 5. So 1, disagree, 5, agree, in the middle, right? So they used that to assess levels of belief. And they used an item matching and completion task, which they designed themselves, in order to collect the students' knowledge of the paranormal. So each of these tools was completed during the start of the course and at the end of the course. So we have a measure of students' belief in the paranormal and their knowledge in the paranormal before they start learning about it. Then they take the class, and then we reassess knowledge and belief at the end of the class. The initial survey was interesting. 86% of their students had belief scores above the normative mean on the belief in the paranormal scale, and 54% had belief scores 1 standard deviation above the mean. So 86 believed more than average in the paranormal, at least according to the BPS, but 54% of the students, that's like half of the students, had significantly higher levels of belief than the average population. 50% of the students even reported that they had their own paranormal experience, and 52% of the report that they had attempted to facilitate a paranormal experience, perhaps by using a Ouija board or tarot cards or visiting a psychic or something like that. Now, the students who reported having had a paranormal experience, or perhaps multiple paranormal experiences, scored much higher on the belief in paranormal scale than those who didn't report paranormal experiences. Similarly, the students who tried to facilitate paranormal experiences were stronger believers than those who had not attempted to facilitate an experience. Oh, I remember trying to facilitate a paranormal experience now. This was actually weird. I remember it was in high school, and I was hanging out with this guy, Chess Bob. His name was Bob, and he played chess. He was really good at chess, I remember. And he used to kick all of our butts at chess all the time. So I'm sitting there with Chess Bob, and we've got this deck of cards. Oh, interesting. Interesting, Nicholas. Yeah, let's circle back to that, because I think that's worthy of spending a little bit of time on here. So we had this deck of cards, and we decided to play this game. Like, let's choose a target card and see if we can get to it by shuffling it into the deck, dividing the pile in 2, picking which one the card is in, then dividing that one in 2, and going down and down and down until we find the card. So we played this, and when I played, and I kid you not, the card that we had picked was the Ace of Spades, and I kid you not, I played it once and ended up on the Ace of Spades, which was like, wow, I'm psychic. It felt weird, but guess what? We never replicated it. So coincidence, right? But it still felt pretty weird. Now, going back to this point, Nicholas's point, yes, I would say, and I think you probably know what I'm going to say, is that you tended to have these experiences because you were kind of in that environment, right? A paranormal or supernatural experience, in that case, would have been an environmentally supported thing, right? Yeah. Whereas the school, maybe the public school, I don't know if it was a public school, but let's say it was a public school, is a bit less. Oh, statues. So we're talking, what are we talking? Like crying statues and that kind of thing? Yeah. Okay, so this must have, was this a Catholic school? Okay, of course, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, and that even hammers the point home a little more, because the crying statue is sort of a purported miracle that is particular to sort of like Catholic spheres, right? You know, statues of, it'll be either Jesus or the Virgin Mary, and it'll seem like there's tears coming, or sometimes you know, sometimes there is fakery. I mean, priests have been caught. I think James Randi busted somebody who was literally using a water pistol to wet the statues. Oh, weird. Oh, wow, that is so strange. Okay, now that would raise, okay, that raises some flags. Missing for 1 week. I mean, was there ever an investigation into that? Okay. Yeah. That's, I mean, I mean, see, this is why, you know, normally this stuff is quite innocuous, but that, to me, I would be very, very concerned about where that kid was for a week, if you know what I am saying. They never figured it out, is I don't know. Yeah. They didn't know where the kid was. I'm not trying to pick on anybody here, but that's super sus, and I would totally yeah, no. Yeah. Um um just because look, abuse happens. I'm just going to come out and say it. Abuse happens. And that kind of sounds like that should be treated as a possible case of that. Oh, maybe she was lost. I mean, hopefully. Look, I don't know. I don't know anything about the case. It's just that's not like, oh, thank goodness she's back. That's like, where the hell was she? You know? But yeah, but your point stands, Nicholas. Like, you're kind of in that environment that's conducive to belief in that sort of thing. It's kind of like when I'm at the university, I tend to be more skeptical. It's an environment that is conducive to a skeptical outlook. But then when I'm going home scrolling through Twitter or something, I might be taken in for a second by some nonsense, and then I have to stop and think, oh wait, no, that sounds like nonsense to me, right? So anyway, what did the so belief in the paranormal was high for these students, but what about their knowledge of the paranormal? Well, most of them, of course, were not really very well informed about objective facts about the paranormal or their relevant or paranormal phenomena's relevance to the course. Raw scores on their pre-knowledge test ranged from 3 to 30 out of a possible 104. So only about 47% of the terms that were introduced on this test were correctly or accurately identified by the students. And students with higher belief scores, they actually seem to do better on the pre-knowledge test. but this was not reliable. What was that? Oh, it was the children. Ugh. So, right, this series of tests was delivered before the class really got going, right? So, during the class, they learned about a lot of the same things that we've covered here so far. So, like extrasensory perception, psychokinesis, but they also learned about some things that we haven't covered, like various occult topics, right? But I mean, obviously, I never took their class, but it seems as though from their description that they taught their materials in quite a similar way to what we're doing here. We're trying to have an open mind, but with skepticism, and we keep to the limiting principles of naturalism. No, exactly, ghosts. Yeah, no, not scared of ghosts, but like if there was a ghost, if you said there was a ghost in my house, I'd be like, whatever. You said, Josh, there's a child in your house. I'd be like, where? So that's how that works. So at the end of the class, they're tested again. So did their beliefs change? Did their knowledge change? And what was the relationship between the change in belief and the change in knowledge, if any? Well, there was, in fact, a change in the students' beliefs. The authors observed, quote, a significant reduction in belief scores from pre to post test, simultaneously with a significant increase in measured knowledge level. Now, of course, the most extensively covered topic here was parapsychology. An extensive belief change occurred when it came to 7 out of 8 of the ESP items. And significant changes occurred elsewhere. Whoops. Significant changes also occurred in 8 of the remaining 17 items that looked at other anomalistic phenomena. So here we're talking about things like astrology, aliens and UFOs. Again, very much the kinds of things we've covered here. So the authors interpret this as meaning that the belief change was selective. Not everybody's beliefs overall became weaker through the course, but maybe somebody believed, somebody maybe grew a bit more skeptical in the possibility of psychic phenomena, but not so much when it came to alien life, for example. Of course, it also depends on the level of intensity at which the topic was treated. I mean, the most belief change occurred when it came to parapsychology items, and they spent the most time on that. So that makes sense that that was the major change. But here's something really interesting. The one single ESP item where belief didn't change, a significant change occurred on 7 out of 8 items. The 8th item was actually belief in one's own psychic ability. And beliefs were not significantly changed when it came to that. So I think that's very interesting. So Jones and Zisnik kind of break this down like this. They said, well, their class probably attracted students who believed in the paranormal more than the average psychology student. Belief was associated with greater learning of material related to the paranormal. So it was good for the students who believed in the paranormal more strongly because they learned more. And all of the students' knowledge significantly increased. The increase in knowledge was also accompanied by a reduction in belief in the paranormal. But, and here's the thing, the reductions in belief were actually selective. So some of the things that were taught in the course, for example, belief levels were lower following the second test. But if there was a sort of occult topic that was not treated in the course, maybe witchcraft, say witchcraft is not taught, but astrology is, and someone comes into the class who believes equally strongly in both of those, what they're saying here is that they were likely to have come away from the class with a lower belief in astrology, which was covered, but not a lower belief in witchcraft, which was not covered, right? And that's just a toy example, right? I know that witchcraft nowadays, like Wicca, is not, strictly speaking, paranormal, right? But just for example's sake. So Jones and Zisney conclude that presenting this scientifically sound information about the paranormal in a class, even with people that believe in the paranormal, is not the completely hopeless task that one might imagine it to be. I mean, after all, believers are susceptible to belief change. I mean, as they indicate in the beginning of the paper, these students are not, they're not dumb. They're genuinely curious, and we should have answers for them. So they think that it's quite likely that anomalistic psychology can succeed in a psychology curriculum, because we can impart knowledge and we can change people's beliefs. Now, think back to this class so far. I know we're not finished quite yet, but do you feel like your beliefs have changed? If you believe in the paranormal, are you a bit more skeptical now, or are you more of a believer in the paranormal? So the question was, do you think that your beliefs have changed with regard to the paranormal? And for the people who said no, is that so? Are you believers or disbelievers, or a little bit of both? Okay, still skeptic, still skeptic, still skeptic, still a believer, a little of both, a little of both. Okay, I want to believe. Mm-hmm. All right, interesting. So I wonder what you make of the principles of naturalism and of the approach that we've taken here. Oh, okay, kind of like a non-overlapping magisteria sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah, like religion is for this and science is for this. Yeah. That's okay. Hmm. You know, for me, one of the things that got me to become more skeptical was, again, learning that what's actually going on is really the more interesting and fascinating and beautiful thing. And one of the things that did this was when I was looking into lucid dreaming, right? When I was a teenager, just thinking, wow, this is amazing what the mind can do. I don't need for psychics, for precognition, ESP, telekinesis to be true for the mind to be an amazing thing. And the more I learn about the mind, the more amazing I think it is. So that's what I was saying earlier, right? Like, what is true is still amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's my take. But whether you believe or whether you're a skeptic, I mean, I think we can all agree on the importance of doing a class like this. Because sure, I mean, we've been talking about the paranormal, but I think that some of what we've learned here can generalize outside of this class. You know, critical thinking in general is a skill that I think, sadly, the world is lacking right now. I mean, talking about belief change, when it comes to belief change, if I have a student that says, I believe in ghosts, what I will do is say, well, here's some evidence from my point of view. Take that, do what you want with it, right? If someone says I'm religious, I believe in God. Okay, here's some arguments for and against God's existence. Do with that what you want. But if somebody says, I think that what's an example of a really nasty conspiracy theory? Well, something like blood libel, right? Or QAnon. Well, flat Earth is, yeah, flat Earth is certainly silly. Like if somebody was like, the Earth is actually flat, I would have to say no, right? Yeah, 9/11 being an inside job, anti-vax people, the blood libel people, the QAnon Pizzagate. I would be irresponsible if I didn't step in and say, whoa, hang on, that's not right, and here's why. Because it's kind of gotten to the point where those beliefs are affecting that they affect more people than just the people that believe in them. And we all have to share this planet, right? So yeah, that is when I will cross that line. If you're, if you respect that others believe, but you don't respect mine, means I'm up to something. I don't know. I'm not quite sure I understand, Nicholas. But no, definitely not an inside job. And the Pizzagate people are just like, no, it's not good. This affects all of us. I mean, these people vote, right? Oh yeah, Pizzagate. Okay, so if you don't know about Pizzagate, first of all, it's one of those gate things like the Watergate incident. Everybody just, after Watergate, now every time some crazy conspiracy is alleged in the government, they just add the suffix gate to it. And this particular one was the idea that Hillary Clinton had children locked up in the basement of a Domino's pizza because she wanted to drink their blood. Yeah, so like basically yeah, and this comes from an old anti-Semitic conspiracy theory called blood libel, where anti-Semites in Europe would accuse the Jews of killing babies and drinking their blood. That did not do this, okay? Like, let me be very, very clear that they did not kill babies, okay? But anti-Semitism is wild, right? So the QAnon Pizzagate is just this. It's just that, except instead of the Jews, well, it's still the Jews for those conspiracy theorists, but it's also Democrats, celebrities, anybody we don't like must be drinking baby blood. And the reason why they make this claim is because they think it has something called adrenochrome in it, which it doesn't. And then they think that this works as a kind of fountain of youth sort of thing. Stay young forever, kill babies, drink their blood, worship Satan, and live forever. I'm not kidding. And so some guy who believed this went in and tried to shoot up the pizza place. And do you want to know the craziest part? It didn't even have a basement. Guy was like, you've got children in your basement. I'm going to free them. The building did not even have a basement. So you have to speak up against stuff like this, right? You have to. I mean, I think people have an epistemic responsibility. Yeah, so that's Pizzagate. Yeah, and Taylor, like I have some friends who are religious in that way, and they're pretty open-minded, you know. I don't think that I think if God were real, like I'm an atheist, right? But I think that if there is a God, he would want you to learn stuff and be open to other people. Makes sense to me. Um Nicholas, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, there is this that well, that's a thing that's common with then with conspiracy theorists. Is that they think that their views are being hidden and repressed, and that's part of the conspiracy, right? Why doesn't everybody know the truth about 9/11 or something? Well, it's clearly because they're keeping the story hidden, and that's why nobody knows, right? That's why only I know. But that's part of the conspiratorial thinking, right? That's not how knowledge actually works. um yeah, if you guys want to know about conspiracy theories and about how science works, I highly recommend reading the work of Karl Popper. Here, I'll put this in the chat. I'll say just read Karl Popper. Oh, I got to spell it right, though. Hang on. Karl Popper. Because he's the guy who came up with the term conspiracy theory. And conspiracy theories, I mean, don't take my word for it. Go read some Popper. But yeah, Karl Popper did a lot of work to kind of ground what scientific practice actually is ought to be about, is what it really ought to be about. He's the falsification guy. He's the guy who kind of came along and said, intersubjective verifiability, what are you guys talking about? We don't verify, we falsify. And he talks about conspiracy theories as kind of like science in reverse, and that's essentially how they work, right? And yeah, better conversations with atheists than with other Christians. I remember this from my very first philosophy class. What year was it? So it would have been 2007. It was my first class ever, first philosophy class. And so our prof, we were talking about Rene Descartes and his arguments for the existence of God. And he wanted to show that, this is still a living debate. And at the time, the new atheism was a thing, right? So he just had a copy of The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. And he was like, look, see, this is still a debate that's happening, and just he literally just pointed at the book. And there was a religious student in class who became quite upset. I don't know why. I guess because atheists exist. But she became very upset and said, if anyone wants to know about God, come and talk to me. So during the break, she goes to talk with this atheist and like, let's talk about this, talk about our beliefs and lack of beliefs. But then this other guy comes over and he's like, I used to be Christian, but now I'm an agnostic and now I don't really know. And they started talking. And my atheist friend was just like, let them fight. And it was amazing. Very interesting discussion. Yeah, let them fight. Because, the one guy was an atheist, just like never was religious like myself. But this agnostic was like, no, I used to be religious. And then I started questioning things and I don't know where I'm at right now. And they were fighting, and not fighting, but like debating. And it was interesting. And the atheist guy, he was just standing there like, hey, look at this. Like, huh, what? Like, it was funny. What is Tabitha saying? I feel like conspiracy theorists implicitly have way more confidence in the competency of, yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I would ask them how the heck all the world governments managed. Yeah, I know. Right. I know. Exactly. I agree 100%. Yeah, I've made this point before. Like, the government couldn't keep let's just look at the states. They couldn't keep the Watergate scandal a secret. They couldn't keep the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing a secret. They cannot keep anything a freaking secret. But they did 9/11, or they made COVID. Like, come on. Really, what this gets us back to is that animistic view of the world, right? It makes more sense to a lot of people that some big bad group of people is in control than the prospect that no one is in control. But the fact is, nobody's in control. So, don't worry about it. Yeah, exactly, Ben. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson has a thing where he talks about this. You still would have had to have built the rocket. You still would have had to have all the research done to build the rocket. Like, if you're going to fake all that, you might as well just go to the moon anyway, right? So, and how are you going to keep all of those people silent? I did a similar calculation. I think I was in college, and I did a calculation for a similar claim for the 9/11 conspiracy theories. Some of them claim that it was a controlled demolition. So I said, okay, imagine we had so many people taking so much time. If you had like a team of a dozen people, it would have taken years to wire the explosives up. And how would they have kept that a secret? They wouldn't have. So, yeah. Well, yeah, like QAnon, adherents to QAnon think they're saving children, right? They literally think that. They think they're saving children from evil people who want to drink their blood. Yeah. Like, it's true. Oh, that's all I have for slides. Yeah, James, I don't know anyone who works at NASA either. This NASA sounds a little fishy to me. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I get it in religious context, like Sadia, there are like just maybe sometimes things you don't do, right? Like it's just a rule. Those are the rules, right? You don't ask this question. Them's the rules, right? I get that. I've always found that not satisfying, right? And besides, I thought in Islam, God is beyond human, like so beyond. This is something that's emphasized that I think Christianity does not really emphasize. Like, Christianity says you can know God personally, and Islam says God is so far beyond your comprehension, just forget about it, right? Like, well, not forget about it, but he's beyond your tiny mind's ability to understand. So I mean, if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, well, I have so many questions, right? I want to know more, even if perhaps my tiny little mind can't, right? Yeah. Yeah. None of us know any NASA employees. I think this NASA situation is a little sus. But yeah, that's dogma. I always like to put it like this. I mean, religion is religion. It's a thing people do. It's perfectly normal. And I'm not going to try and change anyone's mind about it. It's dogma and rigid thinking that's the problem. And it's a problem outside of religion too, frankly. So, yeah. Yeah, exactly. in Leviticus, it says that you should not wear two different kinds of fabric at the same time. You do not plant two different crops in the same field. Do not trim your beard. Yeah, these are in the laws in Leviticus. But the idea that you would go to hell for planting wheat and barley in the same field is a bit silly, isn't it, to us now? And keep in mind that all those religious folks who don't like the LGBTQ community, those guys are pulling from the same source, right? So right beside, man shall not lay with man as he lieth with a woman, it's followed by you're not allowed to trim your beard and you're not allowed to wear cotton and wool or whatever. Like, it's like, come on, dude. Like, yeah, James, that's a really good point. I mean, most religions are not about answering questions. They're about believing, even when you believing in spite of not having those answers, right? So anywho, that's it for the slides. So that's it for anomalistic psychology. I know this was another short one, but it is quite warm, and I imagine you'd all rather be doing something else. So Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about the quiz.
Sure.
I was wondering, should I focus more on studying the readings, or should I focus more on studying the lectures, or should I study them both?
I would study both, but yeah, I would say both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm probably not going to go super deep into the readings, but again, the readings are important for understanding the lectures. So even if I base it on the lectures, understanding the readings will still help if you want to get some studying in. Yeah, I think I'll make an announcement, Jack. I will say, I will first I have to put the quiz together. It will take place during the last week of class. It'll be multiple choice, and it'll be like, you'll have the whole week to do it. So you can start it anytime that week. But once you start, you have a time limit. Yeah, the essay proposal is due the 7th. Yeah, we have the week of the 14th. Let me see. Pretty sure we do. Yeah, we do. Is there a summer break? Well, yeah, it's right now, but we're in a summer course, so there's no summer break for us, unfortunately. But that's why this quiz, maybe makes everything a little easier for everybody, right? So anyway, if you have any other questions, no invigilators, no, it's open book. So yeah, it's all good. Yeah, you just open the quiz, do it, and that's it. Simple. It's designed to be cumulative, so that you get you just retain more from this course, right? Anyway, that's it for today. So I will see you all next week. I think I'm going to do cryptozoology on Monday. So again, tell me what creature you want to hear about. I know some of you have on Discord, but tell me more. Tell me more. And then maybe after that, we can do exorcisms or something. Yeah, it'd be cool. All right, so have a good weekend, everybody, and stay cool, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.